Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack. Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host and producer, David Allen Lucas, president of St. Louis Writers Guild, president of Winding Trails Media, author of Crazy Things, and currently with works in progress. And that's all I'm going to say. I also voice act on the side. And hopefully, maybe by the time this airs, I doubt it, maybe sometime in August, hopefully, I will finally have my demo out. Yay me. So I've only been working on this for a year. I took voice acting for a different reason, and like, oh, this is fun. And then elements led to where I'm actually now going to go into it for a living. So with that said, let me turn this over, because you're tired of hearing me, to my lovely co-host.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Kayembe. I write speculative fiction of all types and all mediums. I am also a freelance editor and am setting up an AWA workshop, writing workshop. So, yeah, come find me on Twitter if you're interested, and local to St. Louis.
So you do freelance editing now?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we need to talk later.
All right.
Also with us is...
Hi, I'm Chanel Achan. I write things like science fiction and fantasy, currently with, stuff in progress, I guess.
Wonderful things in progress.
Writing like a madwoman. That's about the gist of it.
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I'm a children's book author and illustrator. My fantasy book Threadcaster is currently available on Amazon. You can check it out. And at Main Street Books in St. Charles, where you can get signed copies of it. I'm currently in the process of working on another picture book with a local writer named, oh goodness, this is bad. The title of the book is currently Mocha and Me and the Path to the Sea, and it should be out this month, so we'll see if it works out that way.
I like the title.
Yeah, it's cute. It's a very cute book.
With us also is...
Brad R. Cook, author of The Iron Chronicles, which is YA steampunk. And you will be able to get my new series, Steam Tree, which is middle grade, coming this November. So be on the lookout for it. There's going to be a lot of information coming down the pipe soon.
I'm Melanie Lucas. I really have been working on my fantasy novel, making very slow progress, but I've been working on it. And, and we survived GatewayCon, so, you know.
Yes, we did survive GatewayCon. And also with us is the Madama Murder herself.
Fedora Amos. I write Victorian whodunits like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis and Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West. And I am going to be at the Edinburgh Book Festival in August. So if you're there on August 20 or around that time, look me up.
Wait a minute, you're going to Edinburgh?
Yes, Scotland, as in Edinburgh, Scotland.
Okay, and do you have a piece of luggage about my height, my width, and, you know, and I can bring along an oxygen tank.
No, David, I don't.
However, I'm jealous.
I'm looking forward to going there.
And you're also president?
Oh, yes, I'm president of Greater St. Louis Sisters in Crime.
And next up is my fellow voice actor.
Yes, my name is George Soroy. I am an actor, voice actor, author, fix it in post. My name is George Soroy. I am an author, voice actor, and audiobook narrator. I'm also the president of the Missouri Writers Guild. I have finally finished the edits on the Excelsior relaunch coming from Aloris Publishing. A release date will be known in the very near future. And now I get to work on the edits of Ever Upward, Part 2 in the Excelsior Journey. I will also be releasing the 5-part serial From Parts Unknown in the very near future as well. And you can also find two audiobooks that I have narrated. The children's book Rumple Pimple by Suzanne DeWitt Hall, and Argentum, Book 2 in the Pause Saga by Debbie Manber-Kupfer.
Excellent. Okay, today we're going to talk about a little something different. We've talked about writing, and we've talked about some of the details or some of the issues that come up with writing. I'm going to talk about a different avenue that comes along with writing. and that is the speaker circuit. Often, once you are getting out there, you will find that you are being offered, well, you might be offered chances to speak in front of groups, at schools, conventions,
Gateway
Con, standing on a box on the street. I don't care. No, seriously. You have the opportunity to talk, and
I don't think anyone's paid me to do that yet.
To soapbox?
Yeah.
Mostly standing
Well,
on the box
They
of the
chase
street
me
is
away
like-
from it, but they don't ask me
and
to
that's
do
called
it.
Facebook nowadays. Anyway, so let's talk about the writing circuit, or let's talk about the speaking circuit, writing and the speaking circuit.
Well, I think the first big myth is, unless you're super big and you sign up with one of these speaking, touring agencies, for lack of a better term, Bluebird I think is the biggest.
Yeah.
There really isn't a circuit. It is a bunch of things that you're going to put together yourself. You're going to go out there, you're going to find these talking events, you're going to reach out to people, you're going to say, hey, can I come speak at your thing? You're going to talk to people and make networking, and maybe reach out and say, oh, you're going to hear about stuff like a cool festival that's going on or some book fair that's going on, and you're going to send them an email and stuff. So the notion that there's this, hello, you're an author, you have a book, here's your 30
Here's
30
your 30
lined up
cities
events
you're gonna
that we
visit.
all jump onto, and it's just a revolving door. No, that doesn't really tend to exist much. The other big one, though, is you will get asked. A lot of festivals and stuff like that don't really take anyone who sends them an email. They're more looking for, they reach out to people, they decide who they're going to invite, and then they invite them, and, that can be from a variety of ways. All of mine have come simply because I knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody else. So there's that 6 degrees thing that kind of goes on.
Which reminds me too, we actually have something in both our inboxes I need to respond to. A speaking circuit, event. Completely forgotten until now. Sorry out there.
So, how do you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody? What if you don't know the right somebodies? Do
I
you
knew
know
her.
other
I knew
somebodies?
Jen.
Explain in more detail. Because I know Jen too. So explain, I need more of this.
No, to be honest, I've said it before. This is how I got the biggest event that I've had. I got written up in by Missouri Council for the Book, I think.
Yeah, Missouri Council for Book.
And they wrote up an article on steampunk in Missouri, and I happened to be part of that. And out of that, I got the St. Louis Science Center for their first Friday steampunk night, and spoke there. So that really was, I had gotten interviewed, and that interview led to something else. That speaking engagement has led to other speaking engagements. But not in it's not like I've gone to huge places because of that or anything like that. It's just one or two events. A few teachers I've met along the way, I then, have spoken with, and usually once they find out that I'm an author and I'm a kid's author, there's a big push to try and get me to come do something at their school, and that can go a variety of ways. But that's generally how. It's just meeting the right person at the right time, I guess, and networking.
Networking and building a
Yeah.
reputation.
Yeah.
Um,
And George.
So, okay. I'm trying to figure out how our listeners can duplicate this sort of thing, and how I can duplicate this sort of thing, because I have also been published, but never written about in an article. So, did you approach them, or did they approach you? How did this happen? Because that seems to be step one.
For that, I was actually approached. They found me because you can Google me on my website, and they're like, "Oh, you're a St. Louis author." I had mentioned that in my bio, and so I was findable. I had mentioned St. Louis, so they found me for the article. However, to answer your question, I have contacted the Big River Steampunk Festivals to say hello to them, let them know who I am, and let them know that David and I can do sword fighting, and that led to 2 years up there of us sword fighting on Main Street. And that was directly reaching out to them and saying, hey, here's who I am, and here's what I do, and, here's what I can do at your festival. Because it's not, I want to go up and talk about my book. That is not how we approached the festival. We said, we can sword fight on Main Street. And they were like, that's cool.
In fact, I want to come back to that.
And, you know, in the end, it grew from there, whereas last year I then did a whole talk about Victorian inventions and stuff, and we also fought on Main Street, and, you know. So it built.
Oh, you got people waiting. Go ahead.
Wanted to rephrase.
So,
Come back to you.
so my own experience on the quote-unquote speaking circuit, really a lot of it I owe to David and Brad, because it's, you know, like they said, you know, like Brad said, it's all about, you know, who you know and everything, and I just happen to know these guys. They know T.W. Fenley, who reached out to me and asked me to work with her on a panel at Writers in the Park regarding audiobooks. And we basically put together our own PowerPoint presentation that focused on two completely different elements when it came to audiobooks. With her, it was working with ACX. With me, it was the DIY element, which we had actually spoken at great lengths here on an episode last year. And it was because of that I was able to kind of reach out and speak over at Archon. I have a similar panel that Teresa and I are doing at PenCon at the end of September for the same thing. And another element that got me into getting some speaking is the fact that a friend of my wife's just happens to be, or was at the time, a school teacher. And so she asked me back in 2013, when Excelsior was getting ready for its second edition, to speak to the students that were there. And I did 2 different Skype sessions with 2 different sets of students. I spoke at Kennerly Elementary, and then I'd spoken at Bayless Elementary, and that was a huge one because that was me speaking in an auditorium to a whole bunch of kids, and it was a rush. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience that led to a really great experience, like working with these kids, talking about them and everything. Not talking about my book per se, but talking about just writing in general, and that really got them interested, got them motivated, and it was a lot of fun. So that was my experience.
Oh, I was just going to say, my bad.
That's
I
quite
quite
that direction. So
What's going on? I have no idea. If anyone wants to dovetail on that, that's cool. Jump in on it.
Go.
Well, I guess I'm coming up eventually, but go ahead.
The other thing, the thing I was going to ask about, it seems, what I'm sensing is a theme here.
Mhm.
Steampunk man does the steampunk. Audiobook man does the audiobook stuff. So it seems like you would have to have something, like almost a niche that you would be presenting in order for these things
It's
to
a
work
great way
out.
to get through the door. But my first speaking engagements actually were not due to my writing. They were based off of me being a writer and a blogger and everything that came along that. That I started, like one of my first real speaking gigs was Missouri Writers Guild, 2009, I think. Claire asked me to do a whole thing on research because I had been doing a ton of blogging about researching and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And so I gave a huge presentation, an hour-long presentation on researching your novel, your life, and everything like that. I've been doing a lot of genealogy, and I've been doing all the research for the Legacy Project with St. Louis Writers Guild. So because of that, I got in to talking, but it was all writing related, and it was all, but yeah, having that, I don't know if it's a niche, it's a focus, it's an area of expertise, or something that you can talk about.
Okay, go ahead.
What, are you guys still having a conversation, or?
No, I'm going to circle back eventually. Go ahead.
Well, if you don't know people who are putting on events,
Right.
which is a good way to be asked to do stuff, is to know the people who do the stuff and then avail yourself to them in any way. I think everyone here who's a member of the St. Louis Writers Guild started off by just showing up to the St. Louis Writers Guild and volunteering to put tables away, or stay after to help clean up, or show up early, or sit at the info table. Just stuff that didn't come with any sort of a a label or a paycheck, because none of this comes with a paycheck. But, I didn't start my career in the Writers Guild as a secretary. I was asked to become secretary after I became a name and a face that they knew was reliable. But if you don't know those people or don't have an organization like that you can cozy up to and become friends with and become sincere friends with, not cozy up to then use, because that people can see through that and they won't ask you to do anything. But I've been spending the last couple weeks writing a lot of proposals. And the writing of proposals is a good way to get an event into, talking to someone else's event. If you want to be in our local Comic-Con, unless you know somebody who knows somebody who needs somebody to sit on a panel, you need to be writing a proposal and submitting it to Wizard World to see if you can talk at this convention. Writing up proposals is pretty easy. The ones that I've written were a little more than a "Hi, how are ya?" 3 paragraphs about what I can do for you, what I'd like you to do for me, and how this is going to benefit us both. And then a sweet farewell saying you're excited about working with them and hope you'll hear back from them soon. If they have you might want to approach them first and ask if they have a proposal format that they want you to use, but for things around St. Louis, specifically an event that is probably over at this point since we're in the future, the Burbs in Chesterfield.
Yeah, well, I think we might be. If not, we're going to be right on top of it.
Well, it's regardless, they needed to, that was really all they wanted. They just wanted to know what I was going to talk about, how it tied into their events. The Burbs was all about art, so I was approaching them as an illustrator and also as a representative of the St. Louis Writers Guild and how writing applies. And so they wanted to know how my presentations were going to benefit their their event, how their audience would receive it, and why I would be an invaluable member of their team, and also what I would need from them to run, which included, as far as the illustration portion was concerned, I needed a screen, a projector, a tent to put all that stuff underneath, chairs for people to watch if they want to watch, a power source for my technology, and I asked them for a small fee for my time. And those are the things that I asked for. And then it was up to them to get back to me on whether they want to do that, but you can also follow up, because you find out who you're sending it to. I sent it to a contact in the Burbs, and she was the one who was going to then talk to the board of the event. I didn't know anyone else on the board. And I found her through connections with the Writers Guild. So ask around, see if someone knows what's going on, check the calendars of your local whatever.
That's a big one.
If you're traveling and you notice that there's an event going on in the place that you're headed to, see if maybe they want to sponsor you, and you say, I'll do it for a free hotel room. Maybe that would be something that you could ask in exchange, and therefore you're being helpful, you're being forward, you're being forthcoming with your needs. Like, be honest about all your needs. Don't say, I'll just do it for a song, and then show up and say I would like $500. Yeah. They won't talk to you again. No. And don't keep a secret. I have so many surprises I won't tell you about. Well, they don't know what your surprises are. I'm going to make a 2-hour-long demonstration of digital art projected on a screen that people can watch to go from empty canvas to finished piece, and I will donate the piece to the Burbs when I'm done.
Very cool.
Like, that was what my list was. And they have a right to come back and tell me, we don't actually want that piece, can we not pay you? If they want to do that. That's not what they told me. But I was giving a proposal, and then that gives them something to work off of, and that is a way to get into an event that you otherwise were not invited to go to.
How much ahead of time?
How much ahead of time? I sent it in a month ahead of time, but I don't know what the standard operating procedure. I don't think there's such a thing as too early.
No, in fact, I'd say earlier the better.
The earlier the better, and if they don't contact you within a certain amount of time, you can send it again.
Jen, thank you. And
You're welcome.
Actually, and you're right, there is a theme that's being said here, and I'm going to turn this back over to everyone else. And I'm using that as an open door. I've been waiting for it. One of the things that you do when you do talk anywhere, you're not there to sell your book. You're not talking because you are a writer or because you've gotten a book published. Yay, that's good, and people will want hopefully to buy a book. But that's not what you're going to talk about. You want to have something of value to talk about. You want to be able to tell whoever it is you're going to talk, whoever's putting on the event or whoever's reaching out to you about it. You want to be able to tell them what you can bring to the table or to the speaking circuit. For example, Brad and I, when we do writing the fight scenes, Brad's been a fencer since he was 13. I've been studying martial arts, mostly Chinese Kempo and Bata Jitsu, which is a sword draw and kill style, since I was 13. Actually, Kempo has been since I was 9. So being a writer and looking at fight scenes, both on television and in the books and so forth, it gives you got a different perspective of what can be done and so forth. Give value to it. Yes, if you have a book, people will, if you're a really good speaker and they've got money, they will want to take a piece of you home, but that is not your main focus. Your main focus is imparting some type of something that's valuable to them. And I will warn everybody, most of you, a lot of times, you'll be speaking for free. Go for it.
It's true.
And then I think, Kathleen, you had your dovetail?
Oh no, I was actually going to ask Jen about more about proposals, but she answered all of my questions beautifully. I was so pleased.
My contact information is on the website. You need a speaker?
I love it.
Deborah Stolzer or Deborah?
Actually, that's a good point. I enlist all my speaking engagements, like all my speaking workshops, on my website. So I have had people contact me through my website that they have seen that I give a presentation and then contacted me about giving that presentation. So definitely put your stuff on your website and then tell them how they can contact you. But the thing I really wanted to mention was, because you're talking brilliantly about sending out these proposals, is rejection. I have sent out many of these things and either been told no or never heard back from these people. And that is definitely a thing. I tried to set up a whole East Coast tour, and one of my big stops was D.C., and when I went to a bunch of the bookstores in D.C., they were basically like, thank you, but no.
Yeah.
You know, you're nice and all, but no thank you, but no. And, you know, that's going to happen, and you just need to know it and move on. There's no angst or anything. I don't hold any, you know, begrudgingness towards, you know, any of the D.C. bookstores or anything like that. I love them all. But it is a thing you're going to run into, is rejection and no's, and don't take it personally. It's okay. Just find the next con and go there.
Exactly. And real fast, too, before I forget, as you were talking, Brad, about the rejections and all that, I remembered an article I read in Writer's Digest a good decade ago, but still, if you are a traditional author, or if you're not, it still applies to you. If you hired a publicist, or if your agent has arranged for you to go speak somewhere, like in a bookstore, go. Don't tell them that, no, I don't want to go, I want to stay at home and eat bonbons. The only way to get yourself out there and get your book out there more is by going around and talking.
So, for those people who have horrible memories like me, or who just like to be able to read something and have a guide, we've talked about query letters and given people guides to find things, but this is the first I've heard of proposals. So where online do you find out more about how to write a good proposal? Or do you?
Well, I'm going to take advantage of that question, because you just opened up a door. And that is another way of doing the speaker circuit is not doing a face-to-face speaking. There are webinars. And there are webinars like crazy. Of course, you got YouTube. Have got people who've got video casts, or video classes. You've got one I just talked with George a little while ago called Udemy. It's basically, you think Academy, replace the AC with a U.
I thought it was being real gangsta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The branding.
East side, west side, north side, south side, get out of my side.
They need work on their branding.
Yeah, but anyway.
Hear that, Udemy? Look us up. We'll help you.
West is no side.
And with that, a lot of these sites have got classes on almost anything and everything. Now the problem is to go to with Kathleen's question, you need to look at the instructor, you need to look at what the class provides and what the cost is, and so forth. Or if it's free, hey, fantastic, and what you're getting out of it. Also, too, when it comes to proposals, if you want to go down a more hard-nosed version, in the last better way, we're all small businesses. Small business administration. has got a lot of information on their website, as well as down at the local offices or regional offices. But where I was going also, because you opened that door, you have the ability to put out there a webcast of your own. Make sure it is of quality before you publish it, because you can tell. When you trip the ear or the eye, people will know it, and that's not good. You want to be professional with it.
Yeah, and that's going to take a certain studio level quality at this point.
Yeah. Seriously.
But to answer your question on where you can go for these kinds of resources, to be honest, I don't know if there is a how to write a proposal out there on Google. There might be.
I looked at they don't.
I would not think so.
The how to write a proposal options were mostly business style. We're a big business and we're going to help you with your branding, and it's like a 17-page PDF that you put together,
exactly.
and that's not quite what we're looking for.
What you're really looking for is some of these places might have something on the website, but what really, and this is the biggest way to get into cons and conventions and speaking at these places, is to actually attend them. And I don't mean attending as a Joe Public person, I mean as a vendor. Mm-hmm. So you're going to buy a table at this, at LibertyCon or any of the cons or any, Comic-Con, Wizard World, any of those kinds of things. You're going to get a table, and generally, when you get a table, you are then going to have the option to put forward a panel suggestion and say, I'm attending your event. I'm going to be selling in your bookseller's row or something. I would also like to be on these panels, or here's some panel options that I could speak on. Here are things I can talk about, and then that is a great way for the con to tap in and get speakers and resources from people who are already showing up. And it's a great way you talk, and then you go to your table, and people will migrate to your table, and they'll buy from you and buy your stuff and all that kind of stuff. So it can be a really good way of getting into this world. If you're really looking how to get into the speaking con circuit, this is a really good way of doing it. Attend these places, get a table there, and then talk to the organizers. Generally, it's going to be, like for Gateway Con, it's a part of the sign-up sheet. When you sign up for Gateway Con, there's a whole thing you can click on, and then you can say, I would like to speak, here's my topic suggestion. And if we dig it, we'll contact you and be like, hey, come and speak. We'd love to give you this time slot or something like that. So, that's the way it works. It's a similar thing with Archon. It is a very similar thing with Wizard World and Comic-Con. I mean, that's basically how you get in. And if you do it enough, and the other thing is you can follow Comic-Con from city to city. So you can do a 3-city Comic-Con tour. That's really expensive. I'll throw that out right now.
Yeah.
But if you do, Comic-Con's going to notice. I don't know if you know, what's her, Britt Bliss? Britt Bliss. She is Wizard World's kind of cosplayer in resident. And she goes around to every Comic-Con and interviews people and walks around in cosplay and, kind of does all of that. And now, I don't know if she's an official employee of Wizard World, or if they cut her a huge discount or what, but she's a huge part of Wizard World. And going around and doing all this. This is a great way you can get into that world. But it is going to cost you a little bit to get there.
Well, it's going back to what we were before. It's getting to know the people and networking so that they know then to contact you.
That is your biggest thing. And then we'll go down the line.
It's a good thing to get paid.
Yes.
Yes.
I may be the only one in the room who was actually ever on a speaker circuit where the expectation was that you would get paid for every speech you did. I was with the Missouri Humanities Council, and the way that one gets in something like that is to do an audition tape, send it in, if they like it, if it fits their parameters and works with their catalog, then they might hire you. And they send out their catalog then and make their contacts, and people then will hire you, and you get your expenses as well as a set fee. And this, of course, is a wonderful thing. There's a lot of paperwork involved with it, and of course you have to do a lot of research and get the expertise that Chanel was talking about earlier in some fashion. In my case, it was for a particular historical character, Jessie Benton Fremont. for whom I read at least 1,000 articles and books, okay? So I did extensive research, and I knew what I was talking about. And so when they had the money for this program, it worked very well. But even after they lost the money, they lost the funding for the program, there were a lot of people who knew who I was, and you get a lot of extended work, and you can continue to charge for it, perhaps not as much as you got on those, but you can still get your expenses plus whatever fee you determine is reasonable for the groups that you're going to. I went to historical societies and senior centers and civic groups of all different kinds. And that, of course, continues to expand further out. I have not done any brochures, any mailings for at least 4 years. And yet today, I sent out a confirmation for a speech that I'm going to be giving in January. So it is a continuing thing. Once you get the ball rolling, it sort of just goes on its own without doing a lot for it. If you, get good word of mouth along the way.
One thing that also helps when it comes to putting together your proposal is having more than one person. I found to be involved in your panel. I've been pretty much every speaking engagement that I've done, with the exception of the few that I did over at the elementary schools. I had either one person or several other people on the panel with me, and that created a really good dynamic because all of a sudden you have different points of view on different things. I was saying before that Teresa and I, we work together on an audiobook panel, but at the same time, she handles one part of it, I handle the other part. And the first real speaking engagement that I'd done actually was over at Archon, when I was invited to be a part of a panel called Publishing Alternatives in the 21st Century. And because I started off in self-publishing and then went to a small press, that was the opposite of someone else who started in a small press and moved to self-publishing. And it was different than one of the other panelists who was just in self-publishing, another person who was just in traditional publishing. And we created a really good, fun panel that got a lot of people involved because we were all from all different walks of life. And the fact that we had that already prepared, that gave us a leg up when it came to pitching the panel in the first place to the convention heads, because we already pretty much did the work for them. We just said, look, we have this all set to go. Mm-hmm. And that got us basically halfway there when it came to getting us in the door.
I'm going to change the topic a bit.
Okay, then
I was going to jump on what Fedora was talking about. So
please go for it.
So Fedora, you mentioned that you've been on the speaker tour. So I've had the opposite, or the other side of that, where I've hired people from the speaker tour. I mentioned Bluebell earlier, which is a service that you can get into that you have to be multi-published, you have to have won awards, you have to have the pedigree behind you in order to do all this. But when you do, you sign up for this service, and they're going to set up all your speaking engagements for you. And you range anywhere from about $7 to about $35,000 per event. St. Louis Writers Guild was going to bring in the poet laureate, and that was $10,000 to get him. We were able to whittle him down a bit, but you are talking big numbers here. You're talking, but it is a whole thing, and there's catalogs that go out. I still get it every year. The stupid, I think it's Bluebell catalog that lists what they talk about, who they are, what they've written, their availabilities and everything like that. And then the other side of that is the book tours, which are speaking engagements that are set up by your publisher or your publicist usually. And for the bigger tiered people, that's going to be multi-cities, maybe 20 or 30 cities that you're going to run through. And you're going to go to a Barnes & Noble and maybe a school and maybe a few other things while you're in each city. And then you try and tack on other events that you're doing around all of this so you can really, get the most out of it. Famously, Ridley Pearson,
Mm-hmm.
who is a huge writer here in St. Louis, but he's
Local darling.
yes, his books are about Disney and the Magic Kingdom and stuff like that. So Disney also then brought him down and just sent him to all the Disney worlds and everything like that for a couple of weeks, just running around doing school visits and doing all kinds of stuff in the parks with the kids. It was an amazing book tour to watch on Instagram. But you know, these are definite speaker series that happen, and if you can, then you get either sent out by yourself because you're really big and you can do that. Usually, you're a celebrity, like Ethan Hawke just like totally sold out Left Bank Books last year, I think it was, or earlier this year, and it was crazy. People lined up outside the door and buying tickets just to go see Ethan Hawke. But the other side of that is then you might go with like 4 or 5 authors, and it's the 4 or 5 of you touring around. So you might all be Penguin authors who are all YA, and you each have a book that just came out this spring, so you spend your summer, the 4 or 5 of you, traveling around to 20 different cities that Penguin's set up for you. And, you know, you get to do kind of a whole book tour that way. So these are, when we talk about the speaker series, and we're talking about the really big A-list celebrity type stuff, that's where it is. If you are that really high tier, then you get to go on all the shows too, like, you know, The Daily Show, and talk about your book or some fun stuff like that. But we do even lesser authors, I should say, or lower, not as well-read authors, can also join in on that, because you can get on your local television show, your morning shows, you know, all of that kind of stuff, that human interest stuff. Yeah, totally. Kathleen's giving me weird looks like, are you serious? And yeah, Claire Applewhite and a bunch of others I know, Denise Elam Dawn and a few others have all been on TV talking about their morning show stuff.
My first client as a freelance illustrator, a man by the name of Tim Hill, who's Joe the Crab series, was sort of my teeth cutting into being a freelance illustrator. He just called them up and said, hey, I got a book and I'm a local author. You got a time slot? And they said, be here at 4:30 next week. And that was all it took.
By the way, was that 4:30 p.m.
Oh, in the morning. Yeah, that was the morning show.
It's a morning show. It's
and he just had a half an hour for them to ask what it was like being a children's book author. I mean, he didn't tie it into anything.
No.
It was nothing more than just saying, hey, I'm here. If you want to fill a slot, I'm willing to be that name. And they had a slot for him.
And that would take a little luck, probably, to have the time slot available.
Well, he was on 2 or 3 different times with his different books. Whenever he got a new book, you would contact him, and if they had time, you know, he would say, I'm available for the next 3 weeks before it launches. And they'd be like, okay, well, if we have a day the next 3 weeks. And keep in mind that you're talking about, you know, Channel 5 in St. Louis.
Yes.
It's not, you're not trying to get on public... You know, national television, but he is reaching the audience that's going to come to his book launch.
Exactly. So, also, too, don't forget about radio. I was recently on the radio not that many weeks ago, actually back in May. I was on there with Peter Green, who's also part of the Right Pack. He doesn't come on these shows too often. He was talking about his book and his book signing. I was talking about Gateway Con. But don't rule out radio and radio interviews.
How did you do this?
Well, actually, I rode on the coattails of Peter on that one. Peter had been on the show before with one of his other books, and he was coming out this time with his book about his memoir that he co-wrote with his mom, who had passed away some time ago. And he had contacted the studio. He actually knew who to talk to. That's one of the things you need to do is when you if you're going to contact the studio, look up on their website, look for programming, or when you call them, you might want to talk to the programming director, if possible.
Unfortunately, calling them on the phone is a very efficient way of doing this.
It is.
So
It
those
really
of us
is.
who hate the phone, it's one of those things you might have to swallow.
Exactly. And then it was arranged. Actually, he did this by email, but then again, he knew the person already. And it was arranged, and then we set up a day and time, and poof, we're out there. And now, I'm going to tell you, if you do go on shows, be it radio or television, it can be nervous. You can be very nervous. I suggest practicing before any speaking engagement, just to get used to it. Whatever.
Something related? All right. Well, we've talked a bunch about how to get speaking engagements. We've talked about networking a bit, brushed on social media and website presence, and our various expertises that would make us attractive speakers. But what makes an actual good speaker that people will want to see speak more?
And the reason I chuckle at the start of this is because having sat through St. Louis Writers Guild for almost 9 years now, I've seen a lot of really good speakers, and I've seen some really horrible speakers. So I would say the first one is, and this is the biggest, is audience engagement. You have to engage the audience that is standing in front of you. If you are up there and you are the only one who is engaged in your presentation, then oh my God, is that boring, especially if it's 2 hours long.
Yes.
Which is what St. Louis Writers Guild workshops are. And sometimes those things can be slogfests if they're boring, if it's monotone, if it's ill-informed. I remember the talk we had on Twitter.
I was like, I know who you're talking about.
When Twitter was still kind of in its infancy.
I'm going to toss myself on my own sword there. The talk I gave on podcasts. I was like, yes, I know what I'm doing, but I really don't know how to explain what I'm doing to the public. I'm good at
that. Wasn't even a bad talk, but
I thought it was. But anyway,
the good speakers though are the ones who can engage, who can get laughter from the audience.
Yeah.
The minute you hear laughter, that means everyone's engaged because they heard the joke, they thought it was funny. Humor has been, humor is here. We're all happy, and now we've moved on, and they're still now you have them. They're with you, and they're following you along as you talk. People who can interject energy into a crowd. Everyone talks about the energy you get back from a crowd. Well, I've often found that crowds are amplifiers. So I have to put some energy into the crowd, and then the crowd will give me a ton of energy back. But I still have to feed them first. If you do that, though, you can get that. Biggest thing, though, is having something for people to stare at, whether it be a presentation or some sort of, thing going on in front of them. That way, it is something that captivates their attention. And this is usually a PowerPoint these days. Dave and I were joking. We come from the era before when they were like, do you guys have a projector so we can show? We have this thing called a PowerPoint we'd like to show. Remember those days? Those were the early days of the guild. But yeah, so.
No, but we have an overhead projector if you have slides.
Exactly.
I've got one of those out in the garage still. But anyway,
but yeah, having anything like that or a handout if you don't have the visual, so the visual is right there in front of them and can be engaged. But that's the most important one, is to engage with the people you are standing in front of.
Okay, so then to kind of go off of what you did, I think you touched on it a bit. What would you say that you should not do? I've heard a lot of, you should do this to get into this position. You should do this to get these sorts of engagements. Let's say you have the engagements. What should you not do to ensure that you're invited back?
Bueller.
Yeah, anytime you're boring is bad. That's really the worst of it. But I would honestly say the worst thing that you can do is impart wrong information that you say is right. Because now the people sitting in front of you believe you. Simply because you're standing in front of them, they will believe that and they will go forward. And it's funny because when I've so I do a huge thing on pitching, a huge workshop on how to pitch.
It's very popular.
It's very popular, yes. But when I give it, undoubtedly someone is going to come up to me and be like, you told me to do it this way. Which is why at the beginning of every talk I give, especially in the pitching ones, I will lay out that I am going to tell you one way. It is not the only way, and it is not guaranteed to, in any way, shape, or form work the way you hope it does. What I'm going to give you are the tools you need to create the pitch that you need to, that you want. And the reason I do that is because just yesterday, actually, I had a woman come up to me who was like, she wanted to verify what I had said in my workshop about the second paragraph of a pitch. Because she's like, she wasn't certain, she was really worried about it, she was really stressing about it, but she knew that I had said something and then she'd heard somewhere else that wasn't right, and she was trying to figure out which of the two was correct, and in reality, we were both saying the same thing. It was just, we'd said it different ways, but, it's about, the second half of your query letter is about, telling about the isms and stuff in your book besides the characters.
And also, too, which you want to avoid, I'm going to turn this over next to Fedora, is if you sound like an infomercial, the odds are you are not giving a good talk. Yes, I am a true expert. Buy my book for $10.99. It's located in the back of the room. Don't. Please don't.
Well, one final
go
note of not to do, just don't be rude.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, it seems like such an easy and logical thing, but really that's the fastest way you're going to get people not to ask you back, is if you're just an unpleasant person. And being nervous, people understand nervous, but just be honest and be down to earth and don't treat people like they're less than you.
I would add a few things to what Brad had said, and I think he was absolutely spot on with everything he did say. But I would add, if they can't hear you, they're not going to get anything out of it.
Yes.
So make sure that if you have a microphone, you know how to use it. You have it the right distance from your mouth so that you don't pop and annoy everybody with it. If you're in a big room that echoes, you have to, once again, modify yourself a little bit. So go there early enough to find out that stuff.
Yep.
And make sure that you are able to speak clearly and plainly. Make sure also that you don't go too fast. And for the novice speakers, that is the worst thing they do typically. They go blah, 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 and by the time they finish 2 sentences, the audience is gone. You have to go at a rate that is understandable for people. So those are 2 very important things. Check out, can you be heard, can you be clear, and can you go at a rate that people can follow?
If you sound like the legal statement that is on the end of a lot of ads, either radio or television, like, for example,
I thought you were going to use your own.
This test product has not been guaranteed by the FDA. If all subjects are subject to this and this, that, and the other thing.
I was just going to say, we should ask him for legal advice, and he'll give out the one he always gives.
Yeah, there you
The
go.
disclaimer.
Yeah, you definitely want to have notes, like with you on hand, but you also don't want to be married to them. You don't want to write it out to a point where you are literally just reading out whatever you have on your piece of paper. Then you might as well just say, like, here are some handouts. Have a nice day.
Let's all read together.
Right. A good way to do it is just kind of like just do almost like a commedia dell'arte kind of style. Just kind of points along the way. You want to make sure that you have some sort of structure to what it is that you're saying. Otherwise, you're just going to go on and on and on and spend like about 15 minutes on one tangent, and then realize like, oh, I'm about to wrap up, but I still have like all these other points to make. I would say that in terms of adding on to what Fedora was saying when it comes to being able to be comfortable, like behind the microphone, be able to connect, like and engage with your audience. Definitely make sure you're looking them in the eye.
Yeah.
And also, a good thing that I noted that worked really well for me was being a fan of stand-up comedy. I would keep a really good eye on some of the best stand-up comics and watching them basically just command the audience. Not even just so much about the pacing back and forth, but about the way that they were very clearly and just powerfully, saying what it is that they wanted to say. And some of the best, you'll see it right on there. You're engaged from start to finish.
Speaking of things not to do, somebody somewhere, no idea who, said that if you have a book, make sure you mention your book title at least 3 times during your presentation. I should also add, don't do it more than 4 or 5 times. But beyond that, there was a talk that Dave and I were at the Science Center. It was an astronaut. He had published a book. By the way, overall, it was a pretty good talk. But it's like someone had given this advice, and he was working really hard to work in his title, and it seemed very stilted and very forced the way he worked it in. But once he got it in that 3rd time, his talk really improved because it's like he could stop worrying about it.
I'm going to jump in. Let me reveal a little bit of my own background before I start going further than this. Yes, everybody who's ever listened to this knows I'm a writer. Let me go back further. I actually was a certified teacher. I never did get a teaching job, but my bachelor's degree was elementary education. My background also was Scouts. Did a lot of adult leader training, where I was constantly doing the training and so forth. So what I'm about to impart comes from this. And that is, number one, if technology allows you, please do move. Move when you're presenting.
Yeah.
But don't pace.
Yeah.
Don't pace. Move naturally.
I would say there's an entire thing you can look up online about the how to stand in front of a crowd and talk.
Next, also too, what George said a little while ago is all on point. Make sure that you know your topic. Don't memorize your speech. Don't memorize your PowerPoint. Be able to be fluid. Because people are going to ask questions and that can knock you completely off. There's nothing harder to do than controlling the questions coming at you, but also what can annoy your audience is making the question and answer at the end only. Because now they don't feel like they can engage. Number 3, have something they can take home. And I'm not talking about the book. I'm not saying go back and buy my book. I'm talking Fedora. You did great. You had a game handout that you handed out when you talked about poisons.
I was going to bring that up.
Have something that they can take home. Well, I'm constantly asked as president of St. Louis Writers Guild, can I get that speaker's PowerPoint? The likelihood is no, because they're using it to sell. But because it's them, they get paid for those. But if they have a handout, that is fantastic. Then the person can have it. Trick. Knowing when to hand that handout out. Because if you give it, as Fedora will tell you, having been a teacher herself, you hand this out at the beginning of your presentation, guess what everybody's doing? They're reading the darn handout and they're not listening to you. Finally, and especially if you are able to move, there's something called the teacher's tea. At least that's how I've heard it called. Fedora. I keep going for a real name. Fedora, you might know it by a different name, but basically your first 3 rows of people, and then down the middle for about 3 more rows back.
Yep.
Those are the people who are paying most attention, and that's actually how you can approach people the easiest. If you can actually break the teacher's tea by moving among the people more, even so much better. You start engaging them. Finally, Brad talked about looking them in the eye. That can be the most scariest thing ever. I admit this. I can do it, but it is scary. There's a trick. Pick some points in the room that are literally 6 inches above everybody's head. 6 inches or less. If I'm looking at George is sitting across from me. I've got a point, and I'm using my peripheral vision. I'm looking at the point, but technically I'm using my peripheral vision to look at it. I look like I am staring at George in his eyes, but
You feel
I'm
so
really not.
uncomfortable right now.
Suddenly George feels very uncertain.
Yeah, very uncertain, right. But
It looks like I'm staring him in the eye,
Yeah.
and the sweat is rising to the back of his neck.
I have dropped my game face for my martial arts.
I'm looking like the guy in Total Recall just now.
The final thing I'm going to say is, if you ever have a chance to watch a TED Talk, that's also a good example. But I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Practice, practice, practice. Each time you're actually talking to people is a new chance to practice. I have no idea who is next.
I was going to tack on to that, but if you want to, feel free.
I was just going to say open mics at
Yep.
your local event, at your local Writer Guild events, are great practice
Yeah,
for
they are.
public speaking and learning to look people in the eye.
And learning how to speak on a microphone, which is great.
Yes.
By the way, never talk directly into the microphone.
Or
Talk to the
breathe
side.
into it.
See, you're saying all these rules, but you can use that kind of stuff.
You can, but I'm saying the best way to communicate it through is talking past the microphone.
Yes. So my secret actually totally comes from the fact that most of my childhood was spent in the theater. I was on stage, backstage, and writing for them before I left high school. And then after that, I kept doing all of that. So my ability to stand in front of people, and you've mentioned a lot, like in the theater, the thing is always to look at the back row, never the front row. Because if you're looking at the front row, you're down here, and if you're looking at the back row, you can't see them generally, and, it's all
Also
good there.
lights.
For those
And-
people not in the
Exactly.
room, when you're looking at the front row, Brad looked down.
Yes.
Because the stage is elevated. When you're looking at the back row, he looked out across.
And
Yes.
along with that, looking at the back row versus the front row allows you to be a projector voice.
You gotta project.
Whereas
It's all about
the
projection.
front row, especially if you're on an elevated stage,
Yep.
like Kathleen was talking about here, I've got my head down and my projection is not going to be that good, nor is my breath control.
Yeah, you get all of that kind of fun stuff. The other big one is engagement. We talked about that. So the way that I love to do it is, one, through humor. I love to inject humor. But the other one is, and this is one of the things that, for Chanel, things not to do. When you get a question, that's a good question.
Yes.
And the reason is because this person is scared out their butt generally asking that question, and a lot of other people in the audience want to hear that question. And if it's a good question, call it out. Let everyone know. The other fun one is to pick on somebody. This happens to me a lot, where I will be sitting in with the presenter, and then the presenter will be like, Brad and I were talking.
Yep.
Instantly now I've connected with one person in the audience, or the speaker's connected with one person in the audience, and now we're all connecting together. It also makes Brad feel uncomfortable, because now Brad has been outed to the entire room. But, you know, it can happen that way.
You
It's
know,
a
they
great...
feel special.
That's the other way.
That's right.
Brad gets to feel special for that moment, too. But, you know, so you can do all of that kind of stuff. You were talking about the T. I firmly believe in movement. However, as Fedora was saying, you cannot move too much. Do not dance in place, like you're doing the PP dance.
Oh man!
Do not stand in front of your projector,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that now it's on you. I'm a big guy, so you're going to be able to read some words on my chest, but it does not look good.
No.
If I'm standing in front and now there's a huge shadow cast on the wall, you know, you're going to want to do that. The microphone thing. So yes, you should hold the microphone away. You should hold it like an ice cream cone. All of that kind of stuff. However, if I want to change the tone, if I want to inject a new voice into what I'm doing, if I want to play another character, then that microphone comes up and I cover it, and suddenly I have a much different voice. And I can do that and bounce back and forth between the two. It's a nice, easy way of being able to kind of do that. I can whisper. And if I whisper, that draws people in closer, but they can still hear me because I'm whispering into the mic. If you don't have a mic, either A, if you do not have the voice, ensure that you have one, or B, learn to emote, learn to project, learn to increase the volume of your voice without straining your voice. Bring it down to the diaphragm.
Real quick, Brad, you talked about, that was a great question. One of the things to know also is your audience. And what I mean is, are there older people there? Are there people with hearing problems? Or do you have a microphone that the person asking questions is going in, is using? If you don't have a microphone, even if you don't have people who might have hearing problems, you might want to repeat the question for two reasons. One, now the audience has heard it, made sure they heard it, in case they also had a brain fart and we're not paying attention to that moment. But number two, you've regurgitated it back to the questioner to make sure that you have understood what they've asked. Because there's nothing like Kathleen asking, David, what do you think about blah? And I start talking about fruit flies, and that has nothing to do with blah, but I think she asked me a question about fruit flies.
You beat me to half of what I was going to say. I was going to say the same thing about repeating the question. That is a great thing to do. But another thing when it comes to when you're doing your presentation, when you're doing your speaking engagement, if there is a chance that you have worked in a little bit where you're reading an excerpt from your book, do not read directly from your book.
Amen.
This is something that I've said it before on episodes before, and I'll say it again. One thing you definitely want to do is you want to make sure that the excerpt that you're going to read is already picked out and it's already printed out, like with you on hand, so that way you can read it from a piece of paper that has it in double-spaced and larger font. You will almost always lose your place if you're reading it directly from your book.
Amen.
Oh, I'll let Fedora first.
Okay, Fedora, and then Jen.
This was about questions again. I think you have to be very careful when answering questions and to take the question, answer it very briefly, and get back on track. Because if you let yourself get off track, it takes just milliseconds for the audience to go off somewhere. Well, I didn't care about that. And they're gone. And then you have a heck of a time getting them back. So I would say answer one question briefly, get back on track.
Yep. That goes back to what I said earlier about trick is controlling it, and you just nailed that perfectly. Exactly. Go ahead.
To sort of like blanket over, we've been talking about a lot of stuff.
We have.
And a lot of aspects of speaking as a writer, or just speaking in general, and lots of rules to follow. And also the fact that a lot of people listening are probably nervous about the concept of speaking in front of people.
Which is understandable.
I wanted to put emphasis on the most important thing about speaking in front of other people is your sense of calm and control.
Yes.
So if worrying about where you're moving in the room is going to add that extra straw that breaks your camel, then don't worry about that part. If
Grip the podium and don't let go.
yeah, if having a PowerPoint, like I'll speak, from personal point of view. If I rehearse too much, I get super nervous. And if I take too many notes, I get really nervous because I'm trying to follow the notes. And I keep returning to the podium to see where I'm at because I know I have my notes lined out. And I also ramble a lot. Not that anyone in this podcast knows about that. But I will lose myself if I have too strict an outline to follow. And these are things I've learned about me. So when I give a talk, I'm going to be giving a talk, it's August this month at the Writers Guild, talking about critique groups and things like that. I've given this talk before, and the last time I gave it, I did it mostly cold turkey, because I used what I already knew, and I had a rough outline on a PowerPoint, and I knew I would be calmer if I was allowed to be a little bit more relaxed and talk with my hands and not looking at an outline. So that's me. That's what I know about me. And for some people, the idea of going off outline is terrifying, and they absolutely need to have note cards in color-coded order. Do that thing, because you're going to be engaging with your audience in all those important parts and able to take questions and all that stuff if you're not having a low-key panic attack at the time. And you'll be remembered fondly because you felt like a real person up in front of the crowd.
I'm going to say this as a final thought, and I'm adding to what you said. Everything we've talked about are tools. And like any tool, it fits your situation or it doesn't, and you need to learn how to reject it. I'm going to talk about nervousness. Nervousness, to me, is a good thing. Wanting to pee in my pants right before I want to speak is a good thing. Why? And I learned this from both martial arts as well as from speaking. When I'm overconfident about my subject, I don't have that feeling. And when I'm overconfident, guess what? I screw it up. Big time. That nervousness tells me, yes, I know I'm impassioned about this, I'm good, I want to be able to do well, and I'm going to be speaking in front of a bunch of people who I don't know, or even those I do know, and I'm going to have to be able to be focused and learn how to control that nervousness. But it's there. It's a safety. It sounds weird, but it's a safety blanket. So that's a me thing. That's something I've learned from both competition as well as doing speeches and giving talks. And on that note, tune in next week for yet another interesting topic on the writing industry. Thank you for listening. Take care.
Did you know that Right Pack Radio has an international audience? How would you like to reach that audience in regards to your books, your book services, your author services, or more? Go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com and look under advertising for more information. If you don't have a script, that's not a problem. We will be happy to work with you. Once again, go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com for more information.
The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her. Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a